Final Fantasy XIV has a lot of trials, which are large 8-man fights that take a lot of skill and coordination to complete. Well, at least some of the time. They have harder mechanics than regular fights, and the punishment for making mistakes is far more severe than what you'll see in a dungeon, and that's before you try them on extreme mode. A lot of these fights are fun, but some of them stand out above the rest, at least to me. So here's my list of my top 5 favorite trials, at least until Endwalker comes out and changes my entire list. Number 5 is the headliner trial for patch 5.x of Shadowbringers, the Dying Gasp, where you fight against Hades. The scene leading up to this fight, followed by the fact that it plays the main theme for Shadowbringers as you face off against one of the 2 remaining unsundered Ascians, makes for an epic fight. Hades does a bit of everything, including summoning other members of his race to fight you, and that's before he switches to his second form. Now, the fight wasn't all that hard on normal mode, but overall, as a conclusion to a very good story arc, it was extremely satisfying. Now, the extreme is a whole different animal, but we aren't talking about that right now. In any case, the Dying Gasp is my 5th favorite trial in the game. Now, number 4 is the Crown of the Immaculate, where you finally get to face off against Valkyrie. Now, from the minute you and Alphino first came into contact with him, you already should have known this fight was coming. And after invading Yulmore, climbing Mount Gog, and coming face to face with the leader of Yulmore, I've got to tell you, this fight was not disappointing. There are enough mechanics to keep you on your toes, and the fact that the normal mode fight is level 79 means you could end up with a full group of people who are barely geared enough for it, turning it into a miniature extreme level fight. And when you force Valkyrie to throw a temper tantrum and transform into an anime archangel, the fight picks up even more. From beginning to end, it forces you to pay attention, and is more punishing for mistakes than Hades is, if only because of the lower possible item level. That and the satisfaction of beating the crap out of Valkyrie, who I couldn't stand since I first met him, earns this fight the number 4 spot. Now, number 3 is the Jade Stoa, where you fight Byakko. This trial is part of the Four Lords story from Stormblood, which I haven't covered yet, but I definitely will. The story is great, but this fight to me is the most fun part of it. From the minute Byakko transforms into his human form, the fight is intense, but that can be said about a lot of trials. The thing that made this one stand out is when Byakko knocks your entire group into the sky, and you all fall for miles, the whole time dodging his attacks before you slam into the ground so hard that you should have died before you head into phase 2. Now, for a while this was my favorite trial altogether, until the next 2 were added and forced Byakko down to the 3rd spot. Number 2 is the newest trial and the last fight in the Sorrow of Worldlet series, the Cloud Deck, where you fight the Diamond Weapon. The fight starts with the G-Warrior. Now again, I am not calling this thing the new name Sid gave to it, shooting missiles at the Diamond Weapon, one of which the weapon punts out of the air before you and your group climb on top of the G-Warrior to fight it. The group splits into 2, and each half takes one of the 2 platforms and the fight fully begins. The entire time, all of the Diamond Weapon's techniques force you to hop back and forth between the platforms. Some of his moves knock you from one platform to the other, or you can not do what you're supposed to and die, but that's neither here nor there. Now, from a visual perspective, a story perspective, a gameplay perspective, both for the normal and extreme modes, this fight was great. It was a fantastic end to the Worldlet series, and a fight that, despite spending hours farming it for my weapons, I never really got bored with. It was a great trial, and a perfect candidate for my number 2 spot. Now, before I do my number 1 spot, I have to do an honorable mention for the Pool of Tribute. I really like this fight. As the first Stormblood trial, it had a lot happening in it from the beginning to end, starting with him trapping people in a pile of rocks and forcing you to play the cup game, yeeting somebody across the screen and making the only safe place to stand a tiny streak that the player was knocked through. Thunderclouds appear and strike the field in rapid succession, and all of that happens before his transition to phase 2. The music changes and Susanoo gets really, really big, and the tank has to deflect his sword while the rest of the group pushes it away. Then he shrinks down and attacks again, with the music speeding up in the background while his attacks get faster and faster until either you finish him off or he takes you down. Overall, it's a great fight. It doesn't make my top 5, but it definitely earned a shout out. Now, number 1 is the finale to patch 5.3, the Seat of Sacrifice. I'll never forget day 1 of trying to clear this fight and taking the full hour only to fail in the middle of phase 2. This was probably the hardest mandatory fight in the game at the time, with its normal difficulty feeling like an extreme fight. The Warrior of Light, now the one you're fighting, not your character, has so many techniques that you have to deal with that lead to a lot of bad times from the moment the battle begins. One pull ended within the first 20 seconds because the healers didn't heal us to full before his first attack killed us. Can't remember how many times one person failed the button mash section and caused us to start over from the beginning, or how long it took for us to realize that the only way to survive the last attack before phase 2 was to do the tank's level 3 limit break. I even love the fact that if you try to use a limit break on him, he'll make himself invincible, all the while randomly pulling off limit breaks on your group. The fight was difficult, fun, creative, and a perfect end to the main part of the Shadowbringer storyline, making it a perfect candidate for the #1 spot on my list. So those are my favorite trials in Final Fantasy XIV. What are yours? Leave your answers in the comment below, and I'll see you next time.